Welcome to today's webinar. We'll get started here in just a few seconds. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Organic Content Standard 3.0 Launch. Today's presentation will be recorded and sent out to all registered participants and also will be posted on the Hub. We will have a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box on the webinar doc. Any unanswered questions will be answered afterwards via email. Now, on to Lee Tyler, who will do introductions. Lee?
Thank you, Rose. This is Lee Tyler. I'm the Director of Assurance and Operations at Textile Exchange. And with me today will be Amish. If you can go ahead and say hello, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Lee and Rose. Hi, everyone. This is Amish Gosai. I work as a South Asia manager for a textile exchange based in Bangalore, India.
Good point. This is Lee. I'm based in Texas, and I've been with Textile Exchange since 2008, so I know many of your lead contacts at each of your certification bodies that might happen to be joining. But that's my main goal, is to calibrate across certification bodies. But I don't know if y'all can see it, but we have 175 attendees right now. So this is a very highly attended webinar. So appreciate y'all taking the time. Please share the recording with your colleagues at the end. But if you can go to the next slide, Amish, we can talk about what we're going to cover today during the agenda. It's mostly about the new documents themselves and what we have changed between version 2 and 3. But this involves when it becomes effective for the transition of policy, any changes to the logos and labeling, the actual revision process itself, and then those are the 3 documents that we have produced. But we'll cover that in detail as we go. Next slide. The transition policy itself. So this is effective March 1st, 2020, the document OCS 3.0 can be used. That's what we mean by effective date. So it's available for viewing from the website. You can see all the documents, and it's mandatory by next year, February 28th. So we usually give a year between versions for people to get used to the new standard and to allow for the annual audit cycle to come back around. So that all sites can be ready and the certification bodies can be ready for the new changes themselves. And what we have for the scope certificates, that's where it's the actual control is for scope certificates may no longer be issued for 2.0 from that date onward, March 1st, 2021. So that's the control point. Audits may occur anytime between now and 2021 to version 3.0. It's really up to your certification body and you. So discuss with the certification body if you are already ready for 3.0, which could benefit you in some cases. You just have to go through the requirements and see what might actually be required. But we have added quite a few things to this standard, as we'll cover in a little bit, which are stricter. Oh, I tried to hit next. Go ahead to the next one. So logos and labeling. Next slide. This is basically the same logo use and claims guide still applies for now. And there's a reason for that we don't have any changes at this point in time. There's no new logos. And can you go back to the previous slide real quick just to point out that this is the copyright textile exchange at the bottom of the logos is a new logo. It's not on the logo use and claims guide cover page there, but I wanted to point this out, that this is the logo that should be used as soon as you're able, if you haven't already changed it. This is our copyrighted logo use. But go back to the other slide. The reason that we do want to not publish a new version of this is all of our logos pretty much fall under the same types of rights to use and descriptions of marketing versus product claims. All of that is similar across all of our standards. What's distinctive among the different guides is the language that can be used or is required to be used along with that particular standard. And in this case, we are planning to do a review where we would end up merging all of those documents into one particular claims document, and possibly even one logo. is a possibility, but this is a framework that we have to review. We've brought in an external consulting group and process to actually review this. And if you would like to participate that and provide feedback, then you can contact standards@textileexchange.org. But we're not sure what the ending result will be at all, but we do want your feedback, and it will be an open stakeholder process that we will present the ideas before we make any final decisions. But we didn't want to change the logo, and we didn't want to change any of the required wording yet until we've gone through that process. But that's why the claims guide itself has not changed, and the label releases, everything that was previously required is just still applicable for OCS version 3.0. Next slide. This is just to remind people mostly that we do allow in conversion or transitional products to be labeled, and this is just to promote organic agriculture in general. You cannot actually sell organic product for the first 2 or 3 years, depending upon what country you're in as a farmer. You have to have the transition period, and in order to incentivize farmers to actually go to organic, we want to still allow them to use the OCS logo themselves or to sell into the OCS chain. It just does need to be identified as in conversion or transitional throughout the whole process and segregated from organic as if it were a totally different product, which it is. And this blue text here at the bottom is what we have in the logo using claims guide as to what it actually could be claimed as. And this is a problem in the United States because you cannot say the word organic with in conversion or transitional is what it would actually be called in the US. It is, however, allowed in other countries like India. We know will actually issue a transaction certificate from the farm to the gin that says in conversion cotton. So the problem in the US is even with our logos, we don't have any direct wording on this or clarification yet, but the word organic here on our logo is a problem for the FTC, and they do not want organic combined with in conversion or transitional in any language in any way. So you do have to pay attention to the country of sale laws that you're dealing with if you're working with in conversion and transitional. But we have had this, and the Global Organic Textile Standard also allows this as well in a similar manner. So check with your country of sale before you actually label. But as far as the restrictions of our standard, we do allow you to certify that product to the standard. And even if it's a business-to-business confirmation, if you were to make your own claim in the end as a brand, for example, about supporting transitional farmers or in-conversion farmers, you can still use the OCS and certify it up to the end. It's just the final product labeling is where the restrictions begin. Next slide.
Yep, thank you, Lee. Before we start, we want to thank you to all International Working Group member because they have participated in the revision of OCS 3.0 and completed this process. At the same time, we also like to thank you to all the stakeholders, those who have provided feedback during open feedback period time, as well as public stakeholder consultation, because without that feedback, this process cannot be completed. So let's start review the process on how Textile Exchange Standards works. And going for that, I need to explain, what protocol that we use. Right now, Textile Exchange is a member of ISIL, and we follow the ISIL code of good practices as well as assurance policies to develop a new standard as well as the revise the standards. At the same time, our procedures for developing a new standards and the revision of the standards is available on Textile Exchange websites. On the main page, you need to go to integrity subsection page, and there you can download the full document, which gives you information how the Textile Exchange sets the new standards and do the continuous revision of their standards. We have commitment to do revision of our existing standards, the regular standards. So for that, OCS 2.0 released in 2016 with one year transitional policy. So the same way we have for the OCS 3, and then over a period of time, we have the procedure where we revise each standards, like say over a period of 5 years. So we have speed up this process for 1 year to align our revision with the global organic textile standards, so that we both organization come up with the same suggestion and the same solution for the market, and not have a different solution and competing with each other. We support both organizations, and global organic textile standard is also the part of international working group member, and they play a very active role. We have started the process in the month of April 2019 as an initial feedback period, and then we started doing a revision, and after that we did one more public stakeholder consultation in October 2019 for a period of 1 month, and we have received a lot of feedback, initial as well as public stakeholder consultation time. Based on that, from the first feedback, we have defined our process, and this process will give us more information about how to structure the number of calls to address the certain issues. And based on the feedback that we have received and also the previous research, we have also created issue papers. And based on this issue paper, we have created a number of calls, and then having a calls with international working group, and then having a public stakeholder consultant, creating a final draft and doing a vote on a final draft. And at the end, we have released OCS 3.0. So this is a work plan that we have used while revising the OCS 3.0. This is very familiar with the international working group member. Firstly, we have created, OCS terms of reference, which the document describes what are the goal of OCS and what are the objective of the OCS, which is very important for going for a revision, because without goal and objectives, so we cannot have a better standard or tool for a market to address the key issues. And then we had a number of subsequent calls to address on issue paper, provide suggestions, take a feedback from an international working group member, and based on a feedback, we do again changes. We have a number of calls, and then finally all the proposed changes are done, and then we have created a first draft, and first draft was available for the public stakeholder consultation in the month of October and December 2019. And then onwards, we had also had a number of calls which are not a part of standard, but very important to align on a strategy regarding the marketing awareness and the training of the OCS, also the monitoring and evaluation of OCS standard, how to do it. And at the end, in January, we presented all the 3 documents to the International Working Group member, and then we have released the standard in the market. We have a inclusive process where all the people can participate as an International Working Group member. At the same time, we also allow them to do vote on the standards, and at the same time, they can also participate as an observer if they don't want to become a voting member. So we have this process, and this is a part of the initial feedback period where they can sign up for this activity. And based on that, we will ask them to do certain activities and based on expertise. So the first step, if you want to be part of voting member, all international working group member need to sign a digital charter. Digital charters allow them to do voting after signing this document. If they don't sign the document, but they want to be part of as an observer or a stakeholder, they are allowed to do so. And we still allow them to provide a feedback and attend the regular calls, but they don't have voting rights. At the same time, we have one more criteria. Number of people can participate in OCS, let's say IWG member, but every company will get only 1 vote. So let's say if company X has a 3 employee and 3 employee want to participate in the revision, yes, they are allowed, but they will get only 1 vote while doing a voting on a standard. And at the end, we ask for a vote for or vote for against on a final draft. And there is also option is possible in this process. We also, when we create international working group, we also keep in mind that we cater or we invite all the all the actors or all the stakeholders that exist in the industry, especially in the context of OCS, is mainly the supply chain partners, brands and retailers, civil society, and professional services. the industry that we have invited them to join on an international working group member. Here you can see two table along with the chart. The first one is a signed charter. So as I said, if they want to become a voting member, they have to sign. So here you can see the breakdown of different industry actors, those who have signed the charter to become a voting member. And the next table is about the voting on the final document. So if you can see in the supply chain, we have received 100% vote. The professional service, we have received the 100% vote, and then we have also received a 100% vote from civil society, whereas we have received the 75% vote from the brands and retailer. As the standard setting revision procedure requires to achieve a quorum of 75% vote, at least in each category. Once we have that one, then only we can publish the standard. And you can see from the previous slide, we have achieved that percentage, 75% from each category. And based on that, we have released the standards. And here you can see the vote that we have received, the 93.75% on a favor, whereas only the 6.25% are not participate in the voting cycle. So it was widely accepted. All suggestions that we have presented to the international working group are accepted, and then only we have published the standard in the market. This one is more about a standard user manual certification. Lee is going to explain us some basic information about it. Lee, over to you.
Thanks, Amish. Next slide. So with the release of the responsible down standard, the last one that was released, we have 3 different documents now. Instead of just the standard and an implementation manual, it is now split out with the addition of a 3rd document that is certification procedures. And that document is specific to what certification bodies are required to do. So they're held accountable to perform it, the additional requirements that are in there, and how it gives them guidance on how they actually perform an audit. And it's specific to each standard. The responsible wool standard that was recently published also has these 3 documents, and we'll do the same for the recycled standards when they come out. But the standard itself, that document has, here's the list of requirements by number. Nonconformities are issued against the standard document numbering. And the user manual is just guidance now. It used to have a mix of requirements, and we've now clearly articulated the requirements are in the standard. The user manual, which if you look at the document itself, it actually has all the full text from the standard, and then guidance documents, which go to the next slide. Go on to the next slide while I'm talking about that one. Right here, this is what the guidance will look like. It'll have a compass for guidance on the left, and there's a vertical bar next to it. So it's clearly delineating this is your guidance. And it does have specifics to certain situations that are not true for everyone. In those cases, the certification body can't actually use that guidance to say the site needs to follow this particular guidance in that situation. And then there's light bulbs, which are, it says additional guidance, but I like to think of it as best practice whenever you see a light bulb, and there's some diagrams and things that will help you in implementation of the OCS itself. All right, thanks, Mish. Go back to the previous slide. So during the course of the revision itself, we actually changed the goal of the OCS. It used to be that the goal was to ensure trust in organic content claims itself, but everyone felt within Textile Exchange and in the IWG itself that really the point of the entire standard existing is to expand organic agriculture production. So we want more farmers, we want more volume to be converted to organic, and that's really the goal of why it exists. And the objectives actually define how the standard itself accomplishes this through being just a pure chain of custody standard that verifies the organic content. It gives a trusted tool in the case of the logo in the end, and gives access through that combination to farmers themselves. All right, and the final statement here is a reiteration that we do support end conversion and transitional, as we saw on the previous slide. All right, go back forward to 2 slides, Amish.
Yeah, and Lee, just emphasizing one more point to the audience. The OCS is not only meant for the textile product, but it's also applicable for non-food organic material. So as long as the item is not meant for the food consumption, OCS standard can be used.
Yes, yes. Thanks, Amish. The fun example we always use is cucumbers in shampoo. You're not going to eat the shampoo, but it is an organic crop that's non-textile that can be used. So cosmetics are, for example, so you can certify them to the OCS. And the same is true for our other standards. They do not just have to be textile products in the case of recycled. It can be any recycled material. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Advance.
Yeah, so thanks, Lee, for this update. Here onwards, I will walk you through the key updates that we have, focused on a revision of version 3. The first one, we focus a lot on a more robust traceability between the farm and the first processor. To have this particular criteria in a system, we have created a separate section in the standard itself, where the certification of first processor is defined very clearly. What is the meaning of the first processor? At the same time, now till the version 2, we are not allowing to certify the first processor for the both standards, means OCS and GOTS. But now the first processor allowed to be certified for OCS or GOTS. At the same time, the condition applied that CB must to be the same CB. They cannot have two different certification bodies certifying a same facility for two different standards. So with the revision, we are allowing this one. Now, one more key updates in version 3 is a GMO testing protocol. So we have published OCS 103 GMO screening of organic cotton as a separate policy, but now it's also the part of the standard that all certification body and certified sites need to perform the GMO screening, especially for the organic cotton as per this policy. I will walk you through the key changes and more in detail discussion about the same in the subsequent slides. The one more change that we have done is also about organic wool. So the standard is not only about cotton and not only textile, but we thought we need to have a discussion about wool as well in the standards, and we have clear mandatory requirement in the standard now, which says organic wool input must be from non-mulesing sources. And last one also, we have added one more very important point about a certified organization must now maintain a technical specification for all organically grown and OCS certified material. So let's just go in a deeper dive for each topic. So let's go with the first processor. So the goal and objective, we have clearly said what we want. Separate section for a first processor, so the certified sites can understand, as well as the certification body can understand what does it means. At the same time, the requirement about who can certify and how can they certify the first processor for the both standards. We have added a section in the standards under the B3. The B3 is about the first processor certification, and B4 is supply chain certification. So who are the first processor? I can give you the example of the cotton. So in the case of cotton, is a ginning facility is a first processor, where in case of let's take a hemp or some other material, you have the other processor. For example, if you have wool, that means the scouring facility is your first processor. So now first processor needs to follow the two key requirements, section C and section D. Section C is a verification of organically grown material, and section D is a chain of custody. Now, before we go to section C, but let's just give a short introduction about section D. The chain of custody that is referred here is the content claim standard that we have at textile exchange, which is applicable to all textile exchange standard for a chain of custody. So for a first processor, of course, they have to follow chain of custody requirement that we have at the moment. Apart from that, there is one more additional requirement for a section C, which is verification of organically grown material. So why it is, we made it very clearly, because the organic material is not always OCS material. If it is in supply chain, it can be GOTS or it can be OCS. So they have to follow section D. But if it is a first point of entry, that means something is coming from something is coming from the wild area. So that means it is organically grown material and not OCS or GOTS material. So we have specific two section under the first processor. And B4 is the same as the last standard, supply chain certification. So in supply chain certification means they are already certified under OCS certification. So they have to follow the basic chain of custody standard, content claim standard, section D. Here you can see the screenshot of the standards as well as the user manual. Right-hand side of the screen, you can see the section C, verification of organic material inputs, as a screenshot from the user manual. On the left-hand side, the screenshot from the standard. So in the standard, you will find the basic requirement, the definition of organic, what is accepted at the first processing as an input. So you can see the C1.1 talks about the first processor shall have a system in place to verify that organically grown material inputs come from a farm certified by an accredited certification body to comply with one or more of the following. So USDA program, EU program, or any other standard that is approved in IFORM family of the standard. If it is not, if the input material is not meeting this requirement, that means the material is not allowed to use under the OCS. On the right-hand side is a user manual, which gives more information about what is the information that we are looking in a C1.1. So, Lee has explained you at the beginning of the webinar that we have two indicators. One is a compass, which is a requirement where a certified organization need to achieve this requirement, and one is a bulb. So here you can see on right hand side of the screen, the requirement clearly says that testing on a material other than cotton, widely used testing protocol need to be followed. But if it is a cotton, then everyone must need to use ISO IWA 32 2019 screening testing protocol that is published by ISO. The link is already inserted in the document. So, if somebody clicks on ISO IWA 32, it will direct you to the ISO website to learn more in detail about what is the testing method and how they are doing it. One more topic that we have discussed, why we need to have a certificate, why we want to allow a certification for first processor, at the same time to add subsequent information in the input verification. It's one of the big requirements is no visibility of the farm group. The way the OCS 2 is written, that what we ask farm group, or let's say the trader, to provide information at the gene factories or first processor unit is a transaction certificate. So transaction certificate can be issued by farm group, or also somebody bought a material from a farmer as a trader, and then that trader is selling a material to the genie, or there will be a number of traders exist between farm and the first processor. So we want to have a full traceability at the moment, and this diagram will give you the more information what is not visible with the current standard. So the process starts from the farm. You have the farm which is certified by the national standards, IFORM family of standards. Trader comes in between, who will sell the material at the ginning, then subsequent sites at the textile supply chain. So from the ginning till the subsequent sites are already the part of OCS, so there is 100% visibility. So from consumer till the first point of entry, there is a visibility, and we also know from where the material is coming, means who is a trader, if it is not a farm. But what is not visible with the current system is a farm, because you can see here all the orange transaction certificate are the part of the OCS system, so it is visible. But the gray one, let's say the brown one, transaction certificate at the top here, this one is not visible as per the version 2.0. So what we have done, before we go to that, let me explain you one more example. If you can think, we know the trader, but what if there is a multiple trader? So let me just explain one more time. You have the farm. So farm will certified as per the USDA, EU, Indian Organic Standard, Chinese Standard, or any other IFORM family of standard. Once they have a scope certification, they will get a transaction certificate. Both transaction certificate will be put it as an input material in OCS certified facilities. So that's a normal process. So in the simple case, let's take an example. There is one farm and one trader. So yes, there is a visibility. But what if there is a multiple trader between the farm and gene? If you have the multiple trader, then it will be very difficult to trace out the farm group. And what is not visible to us is this scenario. The first point of entry transaction certificate is visible, but the farm group is not visible. If we have one trader, yes, it is still possible to ask trader to provide information about farm. But if there is a multiple trader in between the farmer and gene, then it's impossible to trace information till the farm with the current standards. So what we have changed with the new requirement is we need to have all the transaction certificate and the scope certification of the farm to be linked with the first point of entry. So that means if somebody is selling a raw cotton or a seed cotton or any other raw material from the farm at a gene or first processing end, they have to provide a transaction certificate from the farm to the trader. If there is a multiple trader, then multiple trader transaction certificate along with the farm scope certificate. So having this information, now we got a visibility of the farm. At the same time, we have a more visibility of the supply chain. So here you can see now we have the visibility of the farm. Apart from that, we also learned one more point, that there are certain countries, there is no transaction certificate between the farm and a giner. So what we do in that scenario, in absence. So we have written one specific requirement in OCS 3.0 that need to be followed by all certification body and certified sites in absence of C1.3, which says if the transaction certificate does not exist between the farm scope certification can be used for the volume reconciliation and for a traceability. So if there is no TC, you don't find a transaction certificate at a farm level or a trader level, but the scope certification and other documents such as purchase order, sales invoice, then packaging list, taste reports of the material, and other logistic document can be still used to accept those material in a system. Why we have done this change, not only for not to having a transaction certificate, but at the beginning, and when we define new terms of reference and when we have changed our terms of reference to goal, which says we need to have more organic agriculture farm groups on the ground. To support more organic agriculture activity, we need to find a different innovative ways to accept those materials, those don't have a transaction certificate in few countries. So with this, we have visibility of the full supply chain along with the farm visibility. So with the two new add-on, the section C1.2 and C1.3, we have full visibility till the farm with the new requirement. One more requirement that we have added in the same section is a section 2, material specific requirement. This is very specific to only 2 big material because we thought, and also International Working Group member has decided, these are the 2 critical points that we definitely need to address while accepting any material in a supply chain. The first one is C2.1, which is more about, again, GMO testing of organic cotton, and C2.2 is about non-mulesing wool acceptance in OCS certification. Let's take to one by one. So the first one, material specification requirement, specific requirement. This specific requirement is only about the GMO testing. And so we have published the OCS 103 GMO screening of organic cotton policy on textile action websites. And also it's already circulated to all certification body that they have to follow this procedure to comply with the GMO requirement under OCS. So we have 2 sections in a standard. We have the C2 and C2.1. In a user manual, there is a C2.1 with more guidance with the compass. So what does it mean? And in a certification procedure, I will explain you about certification procedure at the end of the call. There is a section called D1.2, which is a specific requirement for a certification body. And why we have mentioned the same information in all 3 documents, because standard is generic, then user manual is only meant for a certified site. So certified sites need to follow C2.1 according to this policy, and certification body need to follow the same protocol under section D1.2. Let me just give you the basic overview how this GMO policy is working. So it starts with the gening unit because it's only specific to organic cotton and not for the organic linen or organic wool. This is only specific to cotton. So that is the reason the first processor is a gening unit. After gening unit need to follow the OCS 1.103 GMO screening of organic cotton policy. In the policy, we have clearly mentioned the sampling protocol, how to collect the sample at the gene. After the gene, they have to do the testing of that sample only at ISO accredited lab under 17025-2017 and Iowa 32 test methods. Other labs are not allowed under OCS at the moment. After the test, you will have a result. You have 2 results under the Iowa 32. One, the GMO not detected, and second is GMO detected. So if it is GMO not detected, that means you issue a transaction certificate. But if it is GMO detected, then what we do, we don't simply reject. We just want to understand, we want to know at textile exchange, what is the reason behind the GMO detection. Then there is a subsection available in the same policy, the section B, the further investigation. CB and CB need to do further investigation, the reason behind the GMO detection. Of course, the CB cannot do it alone. So they have to do it with the buyer and seller. So they will reach out to the certified sites and also the buyer who is buying it, and they will ask them if they are interested for further investigation. If they are interested for further investigation, CB will perform the root cause analysis for the GMO presence, and based on that root cause analysis, GMO presence report, CB will take a conclusion whether it is intentional fraud, unintentional fraud, why there is this GMO contamination happen at in this lot or in this particular batch. Based on that, the conclusion is satisfactory, and as per the policy that we have given the guideline of what is accepted and what is not accepted. If it is accepted, then the transaction certificate is issued. If it is not accepted, then yes, of course, the raw material is out of the scope of OCS certification. And once both activities done, then both report, the transaction certificate with the GMO detection, with the root cause analysis report is reported back to textile exchange. And also if it is not detected, then also all the TC information need to be reported back to textile exchange. And we are going to have all the information along with each transaction certificate about the test report, farm scope certification, transaction certification detail, as well as the investigation report for if it is a GMO contaminated. So this is just basic overview. To know more about how the policy works, I strongly urge everyone to go to Textile Exchange website, integrated standard page, and then click on the OCS, Organic Content Standards. There you will find this policy available for the audience. Let's go to next topic, but the same related to the GMO and organic. So we have introduced a very specific separate section, the section of verification of organic material input, C1 and C1.1, which says very specifically about what to do for GMO testing. So testing on other material apart from cotton, widely used testing method need to be performed. But if it is cotton, then IVA 32 needs to be performed. So it is already mentioned here. But here you can see we have one more method that we have suggested that people can still use it to know whether that material is grown organically or not. So I'm just highlighting one more time, to know very important point here. What is the difference between the dark bar with compass and the light bar with the bulb? Lee already explained at the beginning. One is a guidance and one is additional guidance. People still can use it, but it's not meant for the auditing purpose. So first one is, of course, it's required as per the policy. That's the reason it is in compass box. But the second one, ISO 20921 2019 textile, determination of stable nitrogen isotope ratio in a cotton fiber, can be used to determine whether the cotton was organically grown or not. So if you go in more detail about this particular test method, you will understand why it is not mandatory requirement. It's already suggested because yes, it is possible. If you know the soil content, if you know the fiber content from the same soil, yes, you can perform this particular test. But if you have only one material, soil or cotton, you cannot perform a test. That's the reason we have just given as additional guidelines if somebody wants to use it for a future. And that is, this is a basic difference for the compass between the light bulb requirement. The next requirement, the section C, is a C2.2 around the non-mulesing. I think most of the audience and the certification body as well as certified sites know we have a responsible wool standards, and under responsible wool standards, we are not allowing any farm to perform a mulesing as per the definition of RWS. So same thing, we are also not allowing under OCS, and as far as I know, it is also included in the GOTS version 6. So there is a specific requirement if the wool is coming from a source where the mulesing is performed, it is not accepted in the OCS supply chain. We have specific guidelines that is given, which is mandatory requirement for a certification body as well as the certified sites to cross-check. The wool is sourced from a country where the mulesing is illegal or not practiced. The organic standard used to certify the farm does not permit the mulesing, or the farm is certified to the responsible wool standard. So if you follow these basic 3 criteria, it will directly automatically qualify the input requirement of the OCS. And this is very specific to rule only. The one that, I was discussing, saying that, we have two sections under first processor, the basic chain of custody, the section D chain of custody that we have under the content claim standard and the requirement for the first processor. So let me just walk you through the, basic chain of custody. So there is no change in a CCS requirement at the moment. However, we are going to start a revision of CCS by next month. So I will urge everyone to do participate in the CCS revision once it is open, so that something needs to be changed on a basic chain of custody. Then we will address this in a content claim standard revision. But we have added one more specific requirement in the section D under chain of custody, section D2, technical specification of input material. So what is the meaning of this technical specification of input material in a chain of custody? So we have a farm group that is selling a material in the first point of entry, ginning, and then we have regular supply chain, textile supply chain, which is certified under OCS. So now this specific requirement, the 2.1 says the organization means all certified organizations shall maintain the record of technical specification for all OCS material, including the organic raw material input on a file. Why we need this information? I will just walk you through the importance of this information in the next subsequent slide. But this is a new requirement in the current version of the standard. So this is added newly. Let's just give you the one example. Let's take an example of cotton, because most of the sites they are doing organic certification mainly for a cotton, and very few, let's say, less volume come in wool and others farm material compared to the cotton. So if you see, we have published at a textile exchange the fiber classification guide in 2017. And this report is including, very basic information that is very important and useful for all the supply chain user as well as certification body, and also for non-textile background person to understand and correlate the technical aspects of the product. This will give you information like, cotton species. If you know cotton species, based on cotton species, the fiber quality information. So whether it is short fiber, medium fiber, long fiber, extra long fiber, and so on. And based on the fiber quality, you can have a relation with the yarn count. And this relation are confirmed. And we have used this number from the two biggest textile machinery manufacturer, Ritter and Lakshmi, on this. And then we have subsequently, you can also see the product suitability based on a spinning type and based on a yarn count. So whether it is open end yarn is suitable for denim, as well as open yarn is also suitable for the home textile. But it's open end yarn is not suitable for the high end products and high end home furnishing products, and so on. So this all information is already included in the OCS 3 user manual under the D section D2. Section D2, which also gives information, the very basic information, not only correlating the species, but also correlating if you know the fiber length. If you don't know species, this is still fine. But do you know fiber length? Because without fiber length or without yarn count, without the product quality information, not a single brand is going to place order, or not a single certified sites is going to process the order. So there is always a correlation of the fiber quality with the yarn quality with the fabric quality with the final garments or finished products. So we have identified and we have just made this correlation. And as I said, these numbers are not just defined by textile exchange or not just given by certification body, but also given by the industry's expert and the machinery manufacturer who are making a machinery for spinning and weaving and so on. And there is one more box which is not a part of user manual, but in the user manual we have provided a link for anyone to go and download this report. This report is free of cost, so it's no need to worry about if someone needs to buy this report. It is available on Textile Exchange Publication Hub, so the people can download. So here you can see, just giving you basic information. The fiber length has a relation with the means of, people are talking about what is the length, short, medium, and long, extra long. What is the relation with the fiber millimeter number with what type of yarn count, with what type of spinning method, and what type of spinning method can generate us what kind of product suitabilities. So this information will be really helpful to avoid certain issues that we have identified during the issue revision, and we have mentioned during the issue paper and IWG revision processes as well. The next document is OCS certification procedure. And here I want to highlight, if you just look at the document, all the border area is highlighted with the blue color. So audience can have easily identify which one is important for, which organization. So standard and user manual are with the plain picture without any border, but the certification procedure with the border. So let me just take you to the standard document. Okay. Lee, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, okay. So let's just, go through this certification procedure document. So if you see, there is one basic acknowledgement section, and then you have the basic information about general information about standards, textile exchange, and the certification procedure. Now, certification procedure is very important for a certification bodies to comply with the requirement of the textile exchange certification procedure. So that will give you more information about that. Section B is a terms and definitions. So, in the standards, we have used terms such as first processor. So what is a definition? We have used terms, accessories and trims. So all the definitions are in a different document. So we have given a reference to refer that T101 terms and definition for textile exchange standards related documents. So that is a reference for that. And again, we have given more reference document, the standard user manual certification accreditation procedures, OCS logo use and claim guidelines, and of course, content claim standards, CCS, and also the terms and definitions in the B2. We have section C. Section C is a requirement for the accreditation body. So those who don't know what is accreditation body, they are totally different than the certification body. So even the certification bodies are also audited annually, and they are audited by the accreditation body. So we do have a requirement for the accreditation body, and they have to follow the ACPC section 3.1.2, especially for OCS. Section D is a requirement for a certification body. This requirement also gives information about general requirement, GMO screening, data and reporting, and other information. Let's just walk you through the key requirement. We have discussed the GMO screening, how to do GMO screening in a user manual. But same user manual means is only meant for certified sites, not meant for certification body. But the section D 1.2 GMO screening in a certification procedure is only meant for a certification body. So here says, certification body need to collect the sample and need to perform a GMO testing based on same policy that is applicable for certified sites. OCS 103 GMO screening of organic cotton policy need to be followed. Also, we have specific requirement in the policy, but at the same time, we have highlighted in a certification procedure document as well that all the findings of GMO cotton to be reported back immediately to the textile exchange in a specific template as per the policy. So it's not only the CB need to perform GMO testing as per the policy, but they also need to report back data to textile exchange. We have added one more section in the D 1.3 data and reporting. So maybe users can recall at the beginning of presentation, there was one call that we had with International Working Group monitoring and evaluation, because now we are the member of ICIL and also is a requirement of standards. We need a data to see the performance of each standard individually. So when we define a goal and objective, we need to see, are we meeting these goals and objectives over a period of time. So due to that, we have introduced a requirement in a certification procedure where the certification body will collect the information from a certified sites, and it will be reported back to textile exchange, and textile exchange will use as MAE. We have one more section for a certification body, a general auditing requirement. As I said, when we decided to add a separate requirement for a first processor, that means we need a separate requirement for even for the certification bodies. So we have section D 2.1 first processor auditing requirement, which also has a subsequent sub points like D 2.1.1. It will go till the D 2.1.6. I won't go to all the points, but there are key points that which is very important. If you see, for example, D 2.1.5, which says the financial record and correlation of purchase and sold material. Records shall be reviewed to validate the volume of organically grown and OCS material purchased and sold. So if it's not only the transaction certificate, the basic information that is collected by certification body, but now they have to review the all financial transaction to make sure that the transaction is authenticated and validated by the financial transactions. We used to have this requirement, but not as a specific in the older version, but this requirement, a specific requirement on verifying the financial transaction is just pointed out very clearly, rather than just put it as a normal part of the transaction certificate issue policy. As now it is a part of regular standard certifications. So it's now the certification body responsibility to verify all the financial transactions, even though if it is coming from farm or if it is coming from a trader at the first point of entry. And then also we have a specific requirement regarding auditing organization certified to other organic standards. For example, most of sites are either certified to OCS or GOTS, but even the country like China, they have their own standards, and sometimes we have seen the same site is certified for the OCS as well as GOTS. To do proper volume reconciliations and other process, we have specific requirements under D2.21 and D2.22, which talks about what CB needs to make sure that the clients, the certified sites, is not selling the same product to the different standards. Means if they have used the material for OCS, that means they cannot use for GOTS or they cannot use for any other national standards for this. And because of that, they have to ask all the information from a certified sites that how many standards they are certifying, and it's only the OCS and GOTS. If it is OCS and GOTS, is already taken care of because we both organization work together. But if it is some other standards which is created by the national bodies or national law, then this information need to be passed on to the certification body, so that if you sold the same one material in one supply chain, the same material cannot be used, or same volume cannot be used for OCS certifications. And so on. So that's a specific requirement that we have added for the standard as well. We have added one more requirement, the first processor, section D2.3, wool scouring. So you have seen, we have specific requirement for mulesing for certified sites. So same need to be audited and maintain a record by certification body as well. So all three checks remain still same. They need to follow whether it is RWS certified farm, or if the standard is permitting mulesing or not, or again, see the legal and non-practice country process on the ground. So it's almost exactly same, but a specific section in the certification procedure. We have a section D2.4. Now D2.4 is meant for OCS certified sites. So this is not a first supply chain, but once we have OCS certified sites starting from spinning and so on, so they need to follow the same D2.1, D2.4.1. This is also the same. All the financial transaction need to be verified and make a correlation of the purchase and sold material. So if somebody says I bought X quantity from X certified facilities with the transaction certificate, we are asking a certification to verify more than that, not only the transaction certificate, but also verify the financial transaction between these two organizations, and make sure that there is actually volume is moving according to the requirement of the OCS. We have the last section, D2.5, the audit duration. This audit duration will give the basic guideline for a certification body to how much time they need to spend on different certified sites, and this is a minimum requirement for a CB to follow. So for example, a cotton gene, which is the first processor. So we have specific timeline. If any gene is certified under OCS, that means the CB need to spend at least 5 hours to do a verification of requirement as per the OCS standards. And the subsection B, it's for the first processor. So apart from gening of cotton, if you have any other materials such as scouring, then boiling and renting for the fibers, then those unit will fall minimum criteria of the 4 hours audit. And for regular supply chain sites, CB needs to follow content claim standards, certification procedure, and that will be also published on a textile action website soon. And that brings me to the end of the presentation, but let me just have one more time, the difference between these three documents, so that, audience can see what are the difference. So, every document at the beginning, it says organic content standard, but there is a subtitle says user manual. This is meant for certified sites. Where the standard is only says organic content standard. So this is basic standards. And the certification procedure, it says certification procedure, but it's highlighted with a blue line so that people don't get mixed up with the certification procedure versus a user manual.
Thank you, Amish. Lee, I saw that you were going to try to respond to a couple of the questions live, so I'll give you the last few minutes to be able to do that.
Yes, thank you. I was trying to type as many as I could while Amish was presenting, so hopefully some of those got answered, about 19 looks like, but some of them were about the website. So thank you, Rose. But the ones I wanted to answer hopefully can be quickly done. And that is, the first one is, can 100% organically grown in conversion or transitional cotton be imported to the USA with that on the label? So let's assume that you have NOP certified farm in India, which is possible, and it's imported into the US and it's in conversion or transitional. They would not have a transaction certificate, first of all. That's one issue to overcome, but basically you could not do it. It is not allowed if it's for sale within the US, and that's what all the labeling laws come down to, is are you selling it within the US market? And so no, at this point in time, you could not call it organic and label it as such if it were really in conversion or transitional cotton, according to US law. It's just different in India. And a couple of the other questions down the line, this is for you, Amish. We're asking about China. Does China issue a transaction certificate for transitional cotton?
No, so as far as we know at the moment, we haven't seen any transaction certificate for China. Okay. Yeah, so if they don't issue, so of course it is not acceptable in a system. But what we have seen in China, the same farm group is also certified under EU, and for that we can have a discussion with the EU, because EU has an equivalence with the NPOP in India. So if NPOP is issuing a TC, that means EU can also have a transaction certificate. If they're also allowing to have a claim, because NPOP is allowing and they have the equivalence, that means we can use a clause number C 1.3 of the standards, which talks about what you do if there is no transaction certificate. Then use a farm scope certification as input material. But it is very important to cross-verify with the standard owner whether they allow such claim or not.
Right. Okay, then the next one, I thought it was just easier just to talk this one through, is how is OCS different from GOTS? And then a follow-up question from someone else was, do we have any GOTS updates? And just to be clear, the Global Organic Textile Standard is a totally different organization based in Germany, and we just work closely with them. So the OCS is different because it's just chain of custody for organically grown material. That's the claim in the end, while GOTS covers the entire supply chain's processing of chemical, social, and environmental requirements at each facility. The chain of custody for both standards is very similar, almost identical. We keep it as close as we can with transaction certificates and the interpretations and guidance. We work with them all the time to make sure that we're consistent in that regard. So the OCS does also certify the entire supply chain for chain of custody, but it just does not cover worker interviews, chemical restricted lists, or effluent from the facilities itself, and water and air contamination. So all of that is out of scope of the OCS, and that's the difference between the two. So we don't have anything related to GOTS documentation apart from our shared certificate policies that we have with them. That's our one official connection.
Yeah, and there's one more, the GMO policy that we have.
Oh yeah, that's true.
We have, it's a little bit different, but it's harmonized with the Global Organic Textile Standard as well. So it's not a different requirement for GOTS and different requirement for OCS. We both use IVA 32 testing protocols. Also the sampling method and the laboratory has to be accredited under the ISO 17025.
Right, and then we also had this one, maybe the last one we can get to. There were several people asking about how many bales can exist on one GMO test report, essentially. So how many testing reports are required with bales?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you want to answer, or do you want me to?
I want to take a stab at it, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Happy to do that.
No.
It's the output transaction certificate of a GIN. In the case of cotton, it's always a cotton GIN as the first processor, which was other questions. It's always the cotton GIN. That output TC has to have a GMO test report available for it. So technically, it could be any number of bales. And is that right, Amish?
Yes, you are perfectly correct. The only catch, no, I won't say the catch, but the huge risk. For example, you have one transaction certificate with 100 bills, and you have GMO negative test reports, means it's only pass on. And then it is going for a subsequent sites, let's say spinning, and another certification body or CB certified sites like spinning has decided to do a GMO testing. And let's assume that, in that testing, the test report comes a positive. Ginning test report is negative, spinning report is positive. Now what will happen? Now this will start investigation. And if the outcome of this investigation, it says it's intentional contamination, means all the 100 bills are going to reject. So this is a normal process. Now just take other example, because this question is asked about number of bills in one TC. Now take example in the same transaction certificate, instead of 100 bills, you have 1,000 bills. And if it is found positive in a subsequent site, that means all the 1,000 bills are going to be rejected. So simple solution, and I always inform all certified sites, better to do, the commercial transaction based on as low as quantity. Because, if you have the rejection chances, that means the volume will be lower and it won't be the bigger. But if you have the bigger number in one TC, and if that lot is rejected, that means whole quantity goes for rejections, because we don't know which particular lot is, out of 1,000 bill, which lot is actually having a contamination, because all are same and the sampling are done from this 1,000 bill, not from 100 bill. So the lower the number, it will be better for certified sites. But from the textile action, we said no, it's always up to the sites and certification body to decide the number of bills per transaction certificate, or let's say the quantity of yarn per one transaction certificate. We are not going to define, but what we need from textile action policy, that you definitely need one test per one transaction certificate. Now remember, if you see the policy, the test is not on a lint cotton. The policy says if it is GIN certified, they have to do test on a seed cotton and not on a lint cotton. You can of course do test on a lint cotton, but the primary requirement under OCS 103 GMO policy is a seed cotton testing and not a lint cotton testing. But once you have spinning or a trader or woven fabric or knitted fabric gray stage, of course you can do testing on those products based on a risk assessment that CB has.
But that would be additional testing, because some other people were asking about that as well, as if can you test at spinning and fabric. But that would be based on risks that the certification body or the site itself decided to do that, and then investigations have to go further back, and it's a lot more complicated. But
Mm-hmm.
it is possible to use Iowa 32 on unwet processed. How would you say? How would you normally say non-wet processed material?
Yeah. That's what we haven't discussed that point because it's a part of Iowa 32 testing protocol. But if you see the standard section C, the highlighted one here in a green, after the underlining line, we say the textile action no longer recommends the testing on chemically processed cotton material. So if you have done fiber dyeing, if you have done yarn dyeing, if you have done fabric dyeing, or if you have done garment dyeing, so once the chemical process is done on the gray product, that means this protocol is not give you consistent results. And again, as per the protocol, you cannot do a testing. Means textile exchange says testing on process means chemical process cotton material is no longer recommended. So as long as you do testing on a gray stage, at any stage, whether it's gray fabric, gray yarn, a gray fiber, or even I haven't seen such example. Let's take hypothetically one example of non-woven gray fabric, or let's say the garment with the gray without color, the gray garments, natural garments like you have color cotton. So if you take testing of those products, it is still possible, and as long as it is not chemically processed.
I want to say thank you so much to our speakers. Today, we have reached past the top of the hour, which concludes this time for this webinar. Again, thank you to our speakers, Amish and Lee, and thank you for participating in today's webinar. As a friendly reminder, all unanswered questions will be answered via email, and an email will be sent to all registered participants with a link to today's presentation. That concludes our webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ren. Bye.